When I leave, I'm going to have a boutique.
It takes money, so something like that.
I'll find it.
Take you a long time to save that much.
Well, I'll be a manager then. Yes, of course, to begin with. Till I've got enough money. But anyway, I know how it's all just going to look.
Sophie and Jancy are classmate friends. Coming home from school, Sophie dreams of opening a boutique, becoming an actress, or a fashion designer. But Jancy knows that they belong to poor families, and Sophie's dreams need a lot of money to come true, which is not possible for them.
They wouldn't make you a manager straight off, Soph.
I'll be like Mary Quant. I'll be a natural. They'll see it from the start. I'll have the most amazing shop this city has ever seen.
Jancy became sad. She knew that they were both earmarked to work at the biscuit factory. She wished Sophie would not say these things. When they reached Sophie's street, Jancy said,
"It's only a few months away now, Soph. You really should be sensible. They don't pay well for shop work, you know that. Your dad would never allow it."
Or an actress. Now there's real money in that. Yes, and I could maybe have the boutique on the side. Actresses don't work full-time, don't they? Anyway, that, or a fashion designer.
Sophie turned in through the street door, leaving Jancy standing in the rain. Sophie murmurs,
"If I ever come into money, I'll buy a boutique."
Huh? If you ever come into money. If you ever come into money, you'll buy us a blessed decent house to live in. Thank you very much.
Sophie's father was scooping shepherd's pie into his mouth. Scooping means picking with spoon. Shepherd's pie is a dish of cooked meat and potato. His plump face was still grimy in sweat. Grimy means dirty. Hanging on his chair, his little son, Derek, said,
"She thinks money grows on trees, don't she, Dad?"
Sophie saw her mother's back, bent over the sink. The evening had already blackened in the windows. The small room was steamy from the stove, and cluttered with the heavy man in his vest at the table. Sophie felt a tightening in her throat. So, she went to look for her elder brother, Jeff. In the next room, Jeff was sitting on the floor, repairing a part of his motorcycle, over some newspaper spread on the carpet. He was 3 years out of school, an apprentice mechanic, traveling to his work each day, to the far side of the city. He was almost grown up now. Sophie doubted areas of his life, which he knew nothing, about which he never spoke. He said little, ever, on his own. Words had to be forced out of him, like stones out of the ground. And she was jealous of his silence. When he wasn't speaking, it was as though he was away somewhere, out there in the world, in those places she had never been. Whether they were only the outlying districts of the city, or places beyond the surrounding country, who knew? To Sophie, these places attained a special attraction, simply because they were unknown to her, and were still out of her reach. Perhaps there were also people. Strange, interesting people, of whom he never spoke. It was possible. Though he was quiet, and didn't make new friends easily, she desired to know those people. She wished she could be admitted more deeply to her brother's affections, and that he might take her with him to the unknown places. Though their father didn't allow it, and Jeff had never expressed an opinion. She knew that Jeff thought her too young. But she knew there was a vast world out there, waiting for her, and she knew naturally that she will feel comfortable, as in the city where she lives. She imagined herself riding there, behind Jeff. He wore new, shining black leathers, and she, a yellow dress, with some cloth that flew out behind. And there was the sound of applause, as the world rose to greet them. Jeff sat frowning at the oily component he held in his hands, as though it were a small dumb animal, and he was willing it to speak.
"I met Danny Casey."
Danny Casey is an Irish wonder boy of football. Sophie had the habit of daydreaming, and then believing them as reality. Though Jeff didn't believe that she met Danny Casey, He was listening to her story patiently.
Where?
In the arcade. Funnily enough.
It's never true.
I did.
You told Dad. I don't believe it.
There I was looking at the clothes in Royce's window, when someone came and stood beside me, and I looked around, and who must it be? But Danny Casey?
All right. What does he look like?
Come on, you know what he looks like.
Close to, I mean.
Well, he has green eyes. Gentle eyes. And he's not so tall as you'd think.
Their father had bathed, and when he came in, his face and arms were shiny, and he smelled of soap. He switched on the television, tossed one of little Derek's shoes from his chair onto the sofa, and sat down.
Sophie met Danny Casey.
Sophie wriggled, moved, as she didn't want her father to know about her meeting.
It's true.
I once met a man who had known Tom Finney, but that was a long time ago.
You told us.
Casey might be that good someday,
Better than that even. He's the best.
if he keeps his head on his shoulders, if they look after him properly. A lot of distractions for a youngster in the game these days.
He'll be all right. He's with the best team in the country.
He's very young, yet
He's older than I am.
too young really for the first team.
You can't argue with that sort of ability.
He's going to buy a shop.
Where'd you hear that?
He told me so.
There's another of your wild stories.
She met him in the arcade. She was looking at the clothes in Royce's window when Danny Casey came and stood beside her.
One of these days, you're going to talk yourself into a load of trouble.
Jeff knows it's true. Don't you, Jeff?
He don't believe you, though he'd like to.
The table lamp cast an amber glow across Jeff's bedroom wall, and the large poster of the United's first team squad, and the row of colored photographs below, in which 3 of them were of the Irish genius, Danny Casey.
Promise you'll tell no one?
Nothing to tell, is there?
Promise, Jeff. Or Dad'd murder me.
Only if he thought it was true.
Please, Jeff.
Sophie, you are still at school. Casey must have strings of girls.
No, he doesn't.
How could you know that?
He told me. That's how.
As if anyone would tell a girl something like that.
Yes, he did. He isn't like that. He's quiet.
Not as quiet as all that, visibly.
It was nothing like that, Jeff. It was me who spoke first. When I saw who it was, I said, "Excuse me, but aren't you Danny Casey?"
Yes, that's right.
And I knew it must be him, because he had the accent, you know, like when they interviewed him on the television. So I asked him for an autograph for little Derek. But neither of us had any pen or a paper, so then we just talked a bit about the clothes in Royce's window. He seemed lonely. After all, it's a long way from the west of Ireland. And then, just as he was going, he said,
If you'd care to meet me next week, I'd give you an autograph.
"Of course, I will."
As if he'd ever come.
You do believe me now, don't you?
He dragged his shapeless jacket from the back and pushed his arms into it. Sophie wished that he paid more attention to his appearance. Wished more care about his clothes. He was tall, with a strong dark face. Handsome, she thought.
It's the unlikeliest thing I ever heard.
On Saturday, they made their weekly journey to watch United. Sophie, Derek, and their father went down near the goal, and Jeff, as always, went with his friends higher up. United won 2-0. And Casey drove in the second goal, a mix of innocence and Irish genius, going around the 2 defenders on the corner of the penalty area, and beating the goalkeeper from a dozen yards. Sophie glowed with pride. Jeff was joyful. Sahi's father screamed. On the bus, someone said that he wished Casey was an Englishman. When Sophie brought Derek home, he told his mother.
Ireland will win the World Cup.
Next day,
What's this you've been telling?
About what?
Your Jeff told our Frank. You met Danny Casey.
This wasn't a questioning. Just Jancy was being nosy.
Oh, that?
Thinking Sophie was hiding something, Jancy was annoyed.
Yes. That.
Well, yes. I did.
He never did.
Damn that Jeff. This was a Jeff thing, not a Jancy thing. It was meant to be something special, just between us. Something secret. It wasn't a Jancy kind of thing at all. Tell gawky Jancy something like this, and the whole neighborhood will get to know it. Damn that Jeff. Is nothing sacred. It's a secret, meant to be.
I'll keep a secret, Soph, you know that.
I wasn't going to tell anyone. There'll be a quarrel if my dad gets to hear about it.
A quarrel? I'd have thought he'd be delighted as anything.
She realized then that Jancy didn't know that Casey had called Sophie to meet next week. Jeff hadn't told about that. So, he hadn't let her down, after all. He believed in her, after all. Some things might be sacred, after all.
It was just a little thing, really. I asked him for an autograph, but we hadn't any paper or a pen, so it was not good.
Jesus, I wish I'd have been there.
Of course, my dad didn't want to believe it. You know what a trouble he is. But the last thing I need is lines of people round our house asking Dad about Danny Casey. If this does happen, he'd murder me. And you know how my mum gets when there's a quarrel.
You can trust me, Soph, you know that.
After dark, she walked by the canal, along a sheltered path lighted only by lamps, and the sound of the city was low and distant. It was a place she had often played as a child. There was a wooden bench under a tree, where lovers sometime came. She sat down to wait. It was a perfect place, she thought, for a meeting of this kind. For those who wished not to be observed. She knew Danny would come. For some time, she waited. She imagined his coming. She imagined him coming out of the shadows. But after some time passed, she began balancing against this, the idea of his not coming. Wishing Danny would come, sensing the time passing, she said to herself,
Here I sit. I feel pain of doubt stirring inside me. I watch for him, but there's no sign of him. I remember Jeff saying he'd never come. And I remember how none of them believed me when I told them. What will I do? What can I tell them now, if he doesn't come? But we know how it was, Danny and me, that's the main thing. How can we avoid what people choose to believe? But it makes me unhappy, this knowing I'll never be able to show them that they're wrong to doubt me.
She waited, judging the changes taking place in her. Resignation is not a sudden thing.
Now, I'm sad. And it's a hard burden to carry, this sadness. Still waiting here and knowing he'll not come, I can see the future, and how I'll have to live with this burden. They, of course, will doubt me, as always. But I'll have to hold up my head, remembering how it was. I imagine my slow walk to home, and Jeff's disappointed face when I tell him he didn't come, that Danny. And then, he'll fly out and slam the door. And I'll tell to myself, but we know how it was, Danny and me. It is a hard thing, this sadness.
She climbed the steps to the street. Outside the pub, she saw her father's bicycle supported against the wall. She was glad that he was at the pub. He wouldn't be home when she got there. Coming through the arcade, she pictured him again outside Royce's.
Excuse me, but aren't you Danny Casey?
Yes, that's right.
I watch you every week, with my dad and my brothers. We think you're great.
Oh, well now, that's very nice.
I wonder, would you mind signing an autograph? His eyes are the same level as your own. His nose turns upwards, and he smiles shyly, exposing teeth with gaps between. His eyes are green. When he looks straight at you, the eyes seem to flicker. They seem gentle and afraid, just like a deer's. And he says,
I don't seem to have a pen. At all.
My brothers will be very sorry. And then, you wait there alone in the arcade, for a long while, standing where he stood, remembering the soft melodious voice, the shimmer of green eyes. No taller than you, no bolder than you. The innocent genius. The great Danny Casey.
And she saw it all again, last Saturday. Saw him run past the defenders, heard the 50,000 spectators catch breath as he hovered over the ball, and then, the explosion of the sound, when he struck it into the goal, the sudden thunderous eruption of exultant approbation, that is, overjoyed applause.